Hello, everybody. It's another Sunday night, so it's time for another episode of Explain Yourself. I'm your host, Benjamin Morse. I'm flying solo tonight. Joey's got some work to catch up on. But our guest tonight is a filmmaker, author, activist, and artist, Robbie J. Atkinson. Robbie, welcome to Explain Yourself.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So, your book is a manga. It's a really nice looking manga called The Seventh Kingdom. Tell us about it.
So, in essence, this is a story about resilience, redemption, transformation, driven by a original plot of revenge. We have our main character, Claire Belcada, who's actually in the middle there, who embarks on a journey of revenge following the decimation of her village. And essentially, as she travels across the globe, as she goes on this trek, she amasses a team and she collides with dark revelations as she learns more about her mysterious family history that she learns is also kept from her as well. And really, all of this threatens to shatter her world even more. So it's a compelling sci-fi, fantasy, action, adventure. Um, yes.
Yeah, very cool. I'm going to bring up the page that you have on your website with the book. And just before we get into some other stuff, where can people get the book right now?
Yes, so they can actually pre-order from Barnes and Noble. They can get it from Apple Books as well. You can visit our TikTok shop. You can also pre-order, and you will, when you do that, you'll especially get a print copy sent to you. But we also have a pre-order window concept that's currently active, and on October 25th, this window will open. People can get to pre-order the print copy of the book along with limited edition merch. So
Awesome. And this is at your website, the Robbie J. Atkinson. It's the sort of book page that we're on here.
that can
Is
be
that
found.
this?
That can be found at rpxmediaproduction.com/the seventh kingdom.
Oh, okay, great. So, um, awesome. So the book looks really great, which people can see now. Um, Tell us some of your influences in kind of putting together the story.
Yes. Well, some of it was inspired by personal experiences. I think I wanted this coming of age experience to really reflect some of my experiences, but also kind of touch on experiences that our target audience would be able to relate to. The concept of realizing that the world around you is not perfect, recognizing the world that has been left for you by previous generations and trying to navigate your way through it. And then also, I think, believe it or not, and I've said this in other interviews, portions of this series actually came from a series of dreams that I had. And I was just in the habit of writing down these dreams. And I think as I was tossing around the idea of the series, I took portions of those dreams and integrated them into the storyline, and it just worked seamlessly. So, yes.
Very cool. Are these? I'm a big Sopranos fan, so they use dreams in great ways in that show. When you kind of talk about putting those into the story, do you actually kind of have to give those dreams to the characters that kind of tie into the themes you're doing, or is it kind of just the events of the stories are kind of just folded into the plot of the Seventh Kingdom?
Yes, they're folded into the plot.
Okay.
Um, there is one particular volume where the character has a dream, and I do like the idea of playing with dreams. As someone who is a Christopher Nolan fan and even more of a fan of things like Prestige and Inception,
Hmm.
I have always had a fascination for the psyche, the psychological, and how that can be represented in storytelling. My dad had his degree in psychology, and I grew up reading psych books because of that from like a young age. And I do have moments where dreams are integrated into the storyline in a way that gives you foreshadowing of certain events. So dreams do play a certain role, but not in that regard.
No, no, still very cool. And it's I think everybody thinks like, gosh, I should write this stuff down, and at least in my case, I never remember to. So
Yeah.
it's good to see somebody actually doing it. So I read a little bit about the team you worked with here. It sounded like you have a studio over in Britain that's doing the artwork for this.
Yes, so an independent studio, and really the main illustrator is located in the UK. The team is all over, but I think a good amount of them are in the UK as well. And we have been collaborating remotely, literally through Discord, to throughout this whole process, throughout the storyboarding, the sketching, the inking, giving feedback, tweaking, and fixing this. And it's been a complete joy, honestly.
Yeah, I mean the results are amazing. I'm an artist primarily, so that's always kind of what I focus on. And I think one of the things with indie books is sometimes the art just isn't quite up to snuff with what people are used to. And this, I mean, I'd put this up against anything, any other manga that's famous and well regarded. I mean, this is just top notch
Thank
stuff.
you.
Lettering, everything. There's really nothing. This is you know AAA quality like pro book. And so I love to see that. So many times art gets shortchanged or the lettering gets shortchanged, the design, and I think readers get something here that is just going to look, obviously looks amazing.
Mm.
Did you kind of did you discuss influences with them, or did they sort of have an art style that they work in, and it's kind of this is it, or did you kind of brainstorm like the look of the project when you were getting started?
So Walla was my first main contact for this, and that is the illustrator I work with most closely. And Walla already had like an inherent style. When we had originally first been introduced through Instagram, actually, Walla's style was a little bit different. So actually, over the time that it took for us to finally get this project started, Walla had like drastically changed. I would say really just improved like the details of their work. But I also had some heavy influences. I wouldn't say so much imagery. I approached Walla because I could respect and appreciate their style.
Hmm.
And then I think more of the stylistic inspiration was more so like aesthetic and world building and maybe even certain fight scenes. For example, someone recently got back to us and told us that they read the Sneak Peek edition that's on Manga Plus Creators, and they said it gave them the vibe of the fight scene in the first episode of Samurai Champloo, which is crazy because that is exactly what I sent to the illustrator as a reference. It's for that scene, yeah. So the fact that people got that off the bat was really great. But aesthetically, I would say, in terms of the world, I was really inspired by things like Outlaw Star, really that whole space era anime of night of I suppose whole space era of anime from like the 90s, like Outlaw Star, Cowboy Bebop, things
Hmm.
like that. So mhm.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, I can't reiterate enough how good this artwork is. Did the team kind of? I don't think I've heard of a lot of. I've worked with some studios and actually some in Britain doing layout work. This goes back years from now, but most artists, work just one person doing all of it. Does the studio like? Do they just does one guy do characters and somebody else is responsible for backgrounds, or how do they approach that?
That's something I've not really asked. It sounds like there's one person who does most of the illustration, and then some of the finer details, some of the coloring, some things look like they're dead. The
Mhm.
lettering, I know for sure they also delegate. But Walla sounds like what they sound like they do a lot, and then they have another person that I'm also in contact with named Ali, and Ali will also go in and fill in some finer details. So it sounds I work more so with the two-person team, but I hear they have a team of like 10. They've just
Mhm.
not told me everything that goes on, the magic behind it. So
Yeah, I think that's I mean, it's a pretty standard approach in like any other creative field to have a
mhm,
team of people doing different things. Just and especially with the lateness problem that most comics have, you'd think there'd be more of an acceptance of people finding good ways to collaborate and get these books out a little faster. I know, obviously, financially that can be tough. It's so hard to make money at this that keep splitting up the pie. It gets even tougher. But
mhm,
yeah, it's just really interesting to see that kind of approach taken.
mhm.
So, how long is the book? And is it something that's going to continue, or is it just kind of a one and done story?
This is an ongoing series. I am currently writing the 18th volume, in the process of completing that. I
Wow.
know by default, as a generous, no, as a modest guesstimate, I would say we've got a total of 15 volumes, or 50 volumes in the
Oh,
first
wow.
season. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's season one, and I know there's going to be a total of 3 seasons altogether. Um, what was your other question?
Like I think you kind of answered both of them. How long? I guess maybe how long is this? This is volume one, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
what you see is the sneak peek edition, which is just a
Mm.
preview to whet your palette. This is going to be about 100 pages, 100 plus pages.
Okay. So the final volume that people get is going to be about 100
Hmm.
pages.
Hmm.
Cool. So there's a lot of stuff here. Wow. Um, you're looking at like you're thinking like 1,500 pages overall when you're all done. As far as like the first story arc or season.
Yes, 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 yes.
That is ambitious. Wow. Um, yeah, I think you'll be able to do it, given that like I said, this work is great. What publisher are you working with, and can you tell me a little bit about what that's been like?
Yes. Well, this is actually, I guess. you would say self-published, but I'm doing it through my company, RPX Media
Okay.
Production, which originally we started off doing film, and film is still an aspect that we operate in, but
Hmm.
we've now branched out. And I personally had always wanted to have multiple departments within the business anyways. There's like the feature film, and then I wanted the more commercial advertising music video aspect, and then the
Hmm.
illustration animation type thing. That was something I personally wanted to do anyways.
Hmm.
And as time progressed, we actually ended up doing a lot of the commercial work first, and then I
Hmm.
decided to jump back out into narrative feature short film work. And after doing our most recent project named Kalimba,
Hmm.
I thought to myself, well, if I can do that, I can do this manga. It's a new form of storytelling, but it's still storytelling nonetheless. And so I decided to go forward and work on this. I think I just took the leap a lot faster than expected.
Hmm.
And the process has been, it's been a learning process for me, because I have had to approach this series as if it is its own business, because it's its own brand, right? um, I would say having to learn about EPUB format, and having to learn about how to upload to Amazon and how to upload to these different mediums. It's all been a process that sometimes is quite time consuming, but it is quite
Hmm.
rewarding at the same time. And even down to like prepping for the conventions, like the aspect of, okay, once you have that concept down, how do you get it out there? What do you do for marketing, right? Having to know who your target audience is, knowing what conventions to apply to, having to learn the mechanics behind making merchandise. Just last night, I was playing around with making buttons for the series, and I think I made like 30. So, and we're going to be having key rings and posters and all of that. So, it's a lot of fun, and it offers a lot of room for creativity, but it also demands a certain kind of you have to have a balance of business as well. A lot of
Hmm.
creatives, they're just creatives, and so they
Yeah.
struggle with the business aspect. So I've been forced to really lean into the business aspect a lot more as we operate the publishing as well.
Yeah. So you're basically publishing it yourself, and you've got this into Barnes and Nobles, and like like the top of the food. Is that like I'm sure a lot goes into that, but how do you do that? I mean, that's crazy to me.
Thank you, thank you. A lot of research, and
Mhm.
I would say, I would say less looking at how there's a concept where you try to find the 20% thing that will get 80% of the work done, if that makes
Mhm. Yeah.
sense. And I started looking into aggregate distributors, started looking into PR opportunities in terms of like the marketing. And really it's the ability to recognize that you are not the expert in everything. So you have to get a team, or at least go to people who have more knowledge than you, and being one, humble enough to admit that, two, um, willing to lean back so that other people have control in that aspect.
Mhm.
And then three, knowing, being able to pivot and take and analyze data and figure out, okay, this is working, this is not. How do we move forward? How do we reach that? How do we cover more ground, so on and so forth? So I would say the aggregate distribution route has been helpful, but in terms of the progress that we've made with pre-orders, it has not been through aggregate distributors that most of our pre-orders have come. The majority of them came from Indiegogo, and quite a good amount of them have come from our TikTok shop, from our social media
Mhm.
advertising, social media presence. So far we have about 57 pre-orders, and the first volume hasn't released yet. So I think that other aspect of it is understanding the marketing too.
Yeah. Wow. It seems like that is just a Herculean task, but I mean, it's cool to see somebody just tackling that. Say, all right, I got to figure this out and go for it. And I think I'll ask you more about TikTok later, because that's something I feel like is I'm hearing more and more creators talk about those shops being really a really good tool.
Hmm.
So I do want to ask a little bit more of that, but I kind of want to bring it back to the story a little bit. Um, the description is really cool. There's some cyberpunk. Some of the imagery here is what you'd see in a lot of manga with a more traditional dress. I also obviously see kind of an alien abduction vibe here. So tell me a little bit more about these. Let's drill down into this world and the characters a little bit, and tell me kind of what's the universe that they live in.
Mm. So this is a, and I credit, I have to thank a friend. I sat down with a fellow filmmaker, Richard Corso, a while back. I had actually hit writer's block, and he told me that, maybe you're having trouble writing the characters and the plot and the story because you don't really know the world that they exist in. So I then proceeded, just on some little pointers that he insisted on. I went and looked into the lore, the architecture, the clothing, the food, even the terrain. And when I got something that created the physical map, because I needed a map to even tell the story of, like, okay, what city does our character go to and where does she go next, and so on and so forth. And from that, you start identifying, okay, in this area, they have this terrain. In this terrain, they have this kind of architecture. This is a mixture of cyberpunk, cyber prep, solar punk, and really it's a matter of there's a major and minor kingdoms in this world. There's a total of 7 kingdoms, the seventh kingdom being the most advanced. That's where you see a lot of the cyberpunk used future cyber prep. There's like heavy classism. There's like a lot of interesting concepts and vibes there. And then as you go towards the minor kingdoms, which is like the first through the, I think it was the first through the fourth kingdom, or the first through the third kingdom, that's where they're a little more solar punk. There's a little more nature. They're a little bit less developed, and there's a reason for that. There's a backstory behind that. And I took inspiration from real world influences. So in the first kingdom, you have a mixture of, for example, Clarabelle, the main character's clothing. That's actually based on the Ethiopian Walaga Oromo attire. Then you have one of the characters there, the tea master. He has a hanfu. In general, in that area, they have loose clothing. And someone made an interesting point that for the less developed area where they have to use more manual labor, they have to have looser clothing to be able to operate, right? And when you go to another kingdom, you see like more city vibes, more rustic. You see more. When you move to another kingdom, you see French timber, half timbered houses. You see a lot of inspiration in a lot of different places. And I think if there's a certain page on our website that gives you a general aesthetic for each of the kingdoms, and I think
Okay.
that would have been more descriptive. But it's an amalgamation of a lot of different things. Every kingdom feels like its own world, so to speak. And that was very much deliberate, for the story and for the sake of kind of offering a change for the audience. When they read, you have the thrill of getting to know this new environment that the character is going to have to familiarize themselves with as they continue on their mission.
Very cool. So I can lose myself totally in world building. I mean, that's my favorite part of coming up with a story.
Yes.
And I, if I don't like stop myself, is if I really slow down, I'll just get totally carried away, and it
Mhm,
gets to the point where I can't even remember, like when I sit down to kind of construct my plot.
mhm,
Like, wait a second, people, not everybody knows like 20 stupid facts about this building this character lives in.
mhm,
I get so carried away with it, and it becomes kind of tough for me to separate like what I need to illustrate to the audience and what I need to find ways to get exposition there and explain it. But
mhm.
I also think, well, that can be dangerous. I mean, the stuff I really like in the franchises and stories I get like lost in and want to keep coming back to. The common thread is always there's just a really interesting world.
Yes.
And that's, I think, just something you have to have. And it's
Mhm,
always, I mean, my favorite part of every post-apocalyptic movie is like the 2 minutes where they show like how the world went to hell and you know
mhm,
just all that stuff. So that's, I think the really good stories kind of find a way, I think, to keep that level of fascination going, as you just get into the characters and their individual journeys, which
mhm,
is really fun.
mhm.
So the main character is part of the seventh kingdom, the nicer place, and then is venturing out a little bit to see what the rest of the kingdoms have to live with and deal with. And she kind of, I think I read that she kind of builds a team. Tell me a little bit more about those characters.
Yes, so she starts off in the first kingdom, the other side of the world, and she ventures to the seventh kingdom. And those other team members are essentially uh, colleagues of her father, people from his
Mhm.
past, that she kind of pulls together, asks them to embark on this journey of revenge with her. And I mean, she encounters her own set of obstacles there because every person had their own reason for splitting,
Mhm.
um, as they all used to be a team and then they suddenly decided to split. And she also learns a bit about that as well. But each character is so drastically different and has drastically different temperament. Um, but all of them, and it's interesting because we posted pictures of the team master here. So this guy here, that you have in this panel with the long hair and the streak of gray, that's the team master. That's his combat alias, and he doesn't look like it because you don't see the armor, you don't see the suit. But in the sneak peek edition, you see his old weapon that he has up on the wall, and she says that's his weapon because she saw it in the picture. And they all have a dark past. They all have secrets and things that they're kind of sort of trying to keep, or they all have things they're running from. And so part of her pulling them together is getting them to face those things that they're trying to escape as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great setup. I mean, you got, especially because they're related to, her father, you've got a really good way to just bring all that exposition out, hints at the past, and you've got all these great conflicts between, these characters' different objectives, and that you can show when they come together, which is, I think, just really fun. That's much like the world building, when you have great characters, especially ones that bounce off each other really well and have different viewpoints. Obviously, these guys are going to have very different objectives and experiences than her. It's just a really fun way to explore a world.
Mhm.
So, what happens? This is the first volume. You have obviously a lot more planned. Tell us a little bit about, if you can, if you're not spoiling too much, the villains that they're going to run into here.
Mm. Well, the main villain is in the Seventh Kingdom, and I've had people ask me, is the Seventh Kingdom themselves just the enemy? Is it like the whole kingdom, or are there individuals in the kingdom? And to that I say it's individuals in the kingdom, specifically the king of the Seventh Kingdom. So every kingdom in this world has a royal family, and that actually plays into the power systems and more into the world building. But in this kingdom, this particular king has been notoriously problematic, and he is the one who is behind a lot of the conflicts that our main character Clarabelle faces. And of course, there's levels to that presentation of him being the problem, because there's the main villain that you see, and then there are people behind the scenes, and there are people that she encounters that farther on. I call them Easter eggs. I think there's probably another word for it, but basically you meet them in one volume, and then several volumes later you recognize or you realize that that was a lot more than she thought it was. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? They
Yeah,
presented a
yeah.
certain way for a lot bigger of a problem. So I introduce levels of conflict in that regard too. So for now, I will say, without spoiling anything else, that the king of the Seventh Kingdom is a villain, major villain.
I mean, you have to have a great villain. Um, so that sounds really cool. So I'm going to take a quick break and play a commercial, and I'll kind of get back to some of the businessy type stuff and how you've put together your team and did publicity for the book.
Mhm.
Let's find
All
that real
right.
quick.
Click that mouse and warp into All Ages of Geek's website, your ultimate portal to everything geek culture. Here you'll find articles that speak your language, from the latest anime buzz to the coolest tech trends. Our mission? To celebrate geekdom in all its glory. Whether you're a gamer, a comic enthusiast, a 90s kid, or an anime aficionado, we've got something for you. Dive deep into them with All Ages of Geek.
All right, love playing that. It's such a cool commercial from our pals at All Ages of Geek. So head over there. There's lots of great content that you will like. So back to Seventh Kingdom. Kind of got into the creative stuff a little bit, and we did touch on some of the things you've done to just create this project, which seems like, just such a big undertaking.
Mhm.
You did an Indiegogo campaign to kind of get started. What were your goals with that? Because one of the things, I guess, to preface this a little bit, we've been talking to a lot of creators that had really different approaches than just, I'm doing a comic, I'm putting it on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. We talked to a guest a few months ago that was doing global comics as a build up to his campaign. So I'm always really interested in how people are using the crowdfunding sites to get things, kind of accomplish different goals at different points in the project's creation. So, what brought you to Indiegogo, and kind of what were you looking to do there?
So I wanted to use Indiegogo as a means to spread word about the series, because we had, and you might have seen it, you might not have seen it, but there is a page where we have merchandise for the series that has been designed by yours truly, and I wanted people to feel that they get a complete experience with the manga. So in addition to the manga, you also get the shirts, you get the cups, you get the key rings, you get all of this, and you can get a nice bundle. But previous attempts to present that didn't go over too well. It didn't get as much visibility as expected. Indiegogo was a good way to present to people bite-sized, palatable little compartments of, okay, here's the manga plus a shirt, here's the manga plus posters and a shirt, to pique people's curiosity. It was also really a way to market in a way, because when people find out about the series, they're willing to share the campaign. They share it to their page. That person, say they have 700 followers, and of those 700, maybe 40 or 50 who look at their story. That's 50 additional people who have seen this and have clicked and have taken an interest and write their names down because they want to know more about it. They peruse, they follow your page. And so it was both an endeavor to raise more awareness about the complete experience with the manga, the tactile and the actual storytelling, as well as an endeavor for marketing, and also, of course, an endeavor for financing to help us reach certain goals. Now, we did not achieve the original goal that we had intended. However, the money that was raised was able to go towards preparation for Anime Week in Atlanta. We shortly after that got accepted into Anime Week in Atlanta, which is the largest anime convention of the Southeast. And we were able to, I have it in a room right across from me, actually. We have the table, we have the cubes, we have everything, and we're prepping. And essentially that is an opportunity to put yourself in even more of a space where you're around your target audience. So for me, the Indiegogo was killing multiple birds with one stone, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's really important to do. Is so many people, I guess at least my impression has been, I just want to make this book. I'm kind of trying to do the whole thing at once on one campaign, like a really simple approach to the crowdfunding, which is nothing wrong with that. But I've also kind of been talking to a lot of people, and I've been stealing these ideas where they work. Like, hey, maybe there's a smaller campaign that just kind of covers this thing, and each time you do it, there's so much traffic on these sites. They're kind of the foot traffic, so to speak, of people that are buying comics online. They're almost like, it's a good reason to be there just for the community that already exists on Indiegogo and on Kickstarter, which is really cool to see, and find different ways as a creator to take advantage of it. So very cool. You mentioned kind of going to cons. I'm kind of dipping my toes into that a little bit this upcoming year. I'm hoping to go to my first con, a small one up here in New York, pretty soon. What's been your experience at those? I know Anime Con's probably a little different, but I think they're pretty similar audiences and things like that.
Believe it or not, this is my first time ever going to a convention as a vendor. And really, my first time ever going to a convention, period, was like a year or two ago. And it was funny because I went to MomoCon, which ironically, MomoCon was held in the same building that Anime Week in Atlanta is also going to be held. So I ended up going to the same building, same place. But I went years ago for the first time just to check it out. And I ended up getting 2 tickets to go for 2 days, and just the environment, the camaraderie, the fandom, the excitement, the artistry, the creativity was amazing to witness. And so for me, getting to return to an event like this as a vendor with a concept that has already received very good response so far, how just going, walking into a store and showing people a flyer. So even more so, going to a place where you have possibly 32,000 people who all like something like this. I'm excited. And on top of getting to be a vendor there, I'm also going to be a panelist at another convention that is more so geared towards gaming, but it also has cosplay, anime aspects like that. And that is actually founded by the voice actor for Shao Kahn, the character in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And so I can't quite speak to what it will be, but I do know that I am excited, and I know that it's really been a treat just going out and seeing how people have responded, and even just seeing the comments we've gotten online. So getting to be in a physical space where you show up and you get to put your best foot forward. I'm extremely excited and extremely grateful too, because not many people. There are people who applied to other conventions and they got in and they were denied from AWA. So to be able to get into AWA on our first try, our first year, because we didn't start this process until like last year, December, in terms of character design. And then January, we kicked things off. And I would say it was until March that social media started to rise a little bit. So all of this has happened within the first year. So I'm just excited to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I had another question, and maybe this is veering back into the creative side a little bit. You mentioned you're a filmmaker as well,
Mhm.
and it's you from reading your biography. It sounds like you do a lot of the editing, and you really know the nuts and bolts of that process. Um, when you write the script, is there a big difference in approach when you're writing like a comic script? And like, how do you kind of get feedback from your artist on what they might want to see organized differently, or do you pretty much have that really all mapped out? And does that kind of come from your film work a little bit?
So, most people do not know about this particular software called Final Draft. Now, Final Draft is something that a lot of filmmakers tend to use. They actually have a format for comic strip writing. I've never used it because when I looked at it, I felt like it was very restrictive. I write I wrote this manga the way I would write for a film.
Hmm.
I wrote it in the same format, wrote it with the same amount of detail. I just made sure I was careful not to put big blobs of paragraphs in dialogue. And if I did, it was broken up in between action. It was very strategic, if that makes sense. I would
Hmm.
say that my filmmaking experience has definitely helped with this process because the same concept still remains. Like I said, it's still storytelling. It's just a different approach to storytelling. So you have to understand how to centralize the conflict. How many layers of conflict are there? What are the motivations? How well do you know your character? And how much detail have you put in to where the illustrator can visualize the world and then turn around and make that translate to the panel? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When you have that foundation set in place, then the illustrator has more than enough information and they can be even more creative in their approach, if that makes sense. And hence why when I'm working with Walla, I've said before and I'll say it again because it's nothing but true, but Walla has oftentimes exceeded my expectation because they have said that they have so much detail given to them that they can do that and more because they know exactly what they're being given. And apparently a common complaint for illustrators is that there's not enough detail.
Yeah, sometimes I mean it can go both ways. The reason I asked is having worked with writers that are also filmmakers, sometimes they're almost like worse in some ways because they're just so used to being able to shoot something and kind of they have a sense of what would work. I think if you were going to just take a few cameras and replace and play a scene,
Mhm.
and they kind of have approaches that are just based on the logistics of that. And then when you get into comics, there's so many different problems with more than one action in one panel. It's like unless they're like a super speed character or something crazy like that, where
Mhm.
you'll have too much going on, or they'll have the character that speaks first has got to be on the other side of the panel, and just the real logistics of comics.
Mhm.
I've kind of found with writers that are experienced filmmakers and script writers, they really um, sometimes I get some problems there that I'm like, oh, this would totally work in a movie, but here in this it kind of goes differently. And then you also see, I think maybe these are not people I've worked with, but I've seen comics by people who are clearly screenwriters, and there's just like a lot of talking. But looking at these pages, I can really tell you've got this paced out pretty well, um, and that's pretty cool to see.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's actually interesting to hear because for me, the transition between film and manga felt pretty seamless. I think when I took a screenwriting class in college years ago, the professor emphasized something I'll never forget. His name was Jack Boozer, and he explained that one of the keys to writing, and maybe this is what has also been the saving grace, is one of the keys to writing a script is you never put a big blob of dialogue, and if you do, you break it up so that the audience can visualize what's happening in between. And I think that format in general, that rule in general, allows for the dialogue to be broken up between the panels.
Mhm.
And I feel like with Walla and their style, there's so much going on anyways. And what I've also observed what Walla does is whatever I write, Walla goes in and like I don't have to ask, I can just tell based on how the panels look. Walla goes in and they emphasize the verb. And whatever the verb is, that's the panel.
No, that's cool. That seems very like I guess intuitive. You'd think that, but I've never heard it like formalized like that. But that's a really cool way to simplify that kind of like how do I turn this into an image? process. Huh.
Mhm.
That's interesting. But I love you mentioned that you did some of the graphic design for this as well, which is really cool looking. And again, that's one of those things I think on indie books really gets neglected.
Mhm.
Um, so did you come up with like the logo and then put together these trailers and things like that?
Yes, so this is where my editing experience came in handy. I picked out the font for the trailers. I picked out the logo. I wanted something. Part of me was a little bit like I was kind of like at a loss for how to approach, because I was kind of like, okay, I want the logo to seem unique, but I don't want to get so bogged down in the uniqueness of the logo that you spend too much time on it. Do you see what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
sometimes the simple design is actually what is better. Sometimes less is more. And I think because this is a series where the art style already lends itself to so much detail, in this case, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as it's not like Times New Roman, you're you're fine, right? Um, and I think that years of editing, doing promotional videography. So, fun fact, you might have seen this. I worked in the K-pop industry. I used to film and edit while on tour for artists. Like, they'd film their
Oh,
concert, I would be running around with my camera filming them. I'd film them in the car, film them while they're eating, film them for their vlog, and then edit either before I went to sleep or after I woke up the next day, edit, finish the video, and then we'd fly out to the next city. And the
wow.
ability to kind of improvise and take very random assortment of images and make it into like a cohesive thing, storyline, that was something I had to hone. The ability to on the fly add in embellishments to make it
Mhm.
flamboyant and eye catching, and not too much, was something I had to develop. So with this, where everything is basically already just laid out sequentially, it was really just a matter of how can I use aesthetics that match with the general aesthetic already. So with this video, for example, there's like a fire effect in the middle of like a scene, and it matches with
Mhm.
like the fire on the cover art, and even on the website for RPX. When you get a chance to look at it, you'll see that there's like flames that kind of stand above the image as you scroll past. And so just paying attention to these thematic things that I had to kind of pay attention to for special effects when I edited came in very handy.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Just traveling with a band and just documenting it like it's a hard day's night or something.
Uh-huh.
It probably sounds a little bit exhausting and stressful, but also I would imagine a lot of fun.
Whew, it was definitely tiresome. We had some nights where I probably got like 2 hours of sleep. We had one night where we flew in, the artist performed. No, we flew in, went to the Airbnb, the artist went and performed, then they went to dinner, then we went back to the Airbnb, and then we packed, and then we went to the airport again. And maybe you got sleep while you were on the plane. So we had some days like that. So it was definitely tiresome, but it was quite an adventure. Definitely.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, I do a lot of video too, in graphic design for my thing, and sometimes it is on a tight timeline like that. It's like for a trade show, they need a 20-second clip of some guy talking about what this robot does, and they want to throw it on social media, but nothing like that. And it sounds really cool. But it's really, I've also seen people kind of struggle a lot, not just with the design of things, but I think um, especially when you're the person creating the world and the story as well, your logo especially is a really important storytelling tool.
Mhm.
And in addition to just defining what your story is, and being a good complement to that, you got to think about like what's going to look cool with the type of artwork I'm using on the cover, and it's got to make all sorts of different types of impact in different ways, and then of
Mhm.
course be memorable and be fun to look at and all that stuff.
Mhm.
I think not only do people kind of not give the design like enough attention, I think, but it also, I don't know if people focus on what an important thing that is. And like a lot of this other stuff, it looks like you put a lot of thought into that.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the key for that was also texture. If you look at, maybe you see it when you scroll back to the top of the page there, and you look at the letters, behind the characters,
Mhm.
there's a kind of like a scratchiness
Yeah.
to the texture of the letters. And I remember I was talking to a business coach, and she said to me, how can you, like, what are some words you use to describe the series? And although our main character is female, in no way is this any kind of magical girl manga. Like this, she's edgy, she's gritty. The fights are gritty. It's raw. They don't hold punches, as you could see if you saw the preview. And I remember kind of saying like gritty, with a mix of like sleek sci-fi. And so she said to me, so how can you relay the sleekness with the grittiness? And when she asked me that, I thought about it. And she said, think of every way that you can integrate gritty and sleek into everything, into your text, into your backgrounds, into your website, into the presentation. And when I say sleek, I mean more so just like clean. There are some areas, and I think like this graphic here, I think for me, it does that because you have the gradient into the characters. So you don't have like a hard just black. It fades into the characters, and then you have the grittiness of the scratchy textures. And so I tried to strike that balance and the font as well. And that's what you're
Yeah.
also looking for.
Yeah, no, it looks. I mean, yeah, that's. I think you got to think about that stuff all together. Which you kind of, again, that's like really good advice. The way she mentioned that, and I think it's one of those things that like seems obvious, and when you hear someone say it in a way that's very easy to distill, and whenever someone's told things like that to me, it's really been something that doesn't necessarily change my approach, but makes it so much simpler the next time around. To like,
Yeah.
think, yeah, okay, now I know. I kind of go and approach it like I'm looking for those points, things that I want to define in every image. And I think the other thing with this one, this image especially, is like it reminds me, I think, in the right ways of Samurai Champloo. Like I feel like I had this wallpaper of those characters almost like 20 years ago or something like that on my computer. Like, and that's not to say that it's like even homaging that necessarily, but it's a way to just let your readers know what they're in for here. It's a new series. It's really hard to just get people's attention, but once you've managed to do that, hold it and find really fast ways to let people kind of know what they're in for. Um, I look at this and I have a pretty good idea what other stuff I like that it's going to be like, and just really gets that across quickly. And that's the other thing that's really hard to think about is like you just don't get people's attention for that long. There's always something else to look at, and I think this, especially when it's as polished as it is, everything here looks like so professional. I have a pretty good feeling that you're going to accomplish all these volumes. It's not going to be like, okay, this is just they're going to do it until they get bored or it doesn't work out. It's just seeing images like this, I think, really communicates not just that it looks cool, not just what type of story it's going to be, but that you're somebody who puts stuff together and it's going to be cool. And if you're good enough to do this, you're going to be able to do this story. And I think that's something that, at least in indie comics, people are chattering a lot. I think about how, it's so hard to put these books together, and a lot of creators kind of drop off as their interest fades or it just gets too tough. And I think that's another thing that's really important to find ways to convey is like, hey, I'm in this. It's going to happen. It's going to be cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. But so what's the name of that? How do I spell Archaics? I've been trying to do that while we've been talking so I can bring that on screen.
Yes. So sorry, what are you asking me?
The Archaics, the publishing site that people can go to order this?
Oh, yes. So our rpxmediaproduction.com/the seventh kingdom, and that's the number 7 TH kingdom.
All right, I think I've got that here. Cool. I must have looked at this before because it filled itself in. So this is where people can go. I want to just drop this in the comments. So if people are watching this later, they can just click on that and easily go over to it. So this is where they sign up. This is, I think, the first I've seen this merchandise. This looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Wow, that is a shirt. That's a statement.
Thank you.
Very cool. So this is where you're kind of trying to drive traffic to. This is where people can pre-order the book. When they do the pre-ordering, how's that going to work? Is that something? I think I saw something mentioning that you'd ship it direct to them, so it's kind of like analogous to an Indiegogo or Kickstarter campaign where you're going to fulfill it yourself, or is this something where they can pre-order from Barnes and Nobles through this?
So if they pre-order through Barnes and Noble, they will get the ebook available to them as soon as it is finished, it has been uploaded and it's been published. If they order through our TikTok shop, they will get that physical book sent to them. If they order through the pre-order itself, and the pre-order window opens, so if you scroll down on that page, you'll see a little portal, there you go, that says pre-order window is closed. If they join that wait list, and when the window opens, they go in, they place their orders, then everything that they want will be sent to them in a box, actually, that has the the same banners design on it.
Mhm.
And so it'll be like a custom design box with frills and a nice unboxing experience. And depending on whatever package you chose, you will also get the online scavenger hunt that was built into the series. Every volume has a corresponding scavenger hunt on a secret page to our website. So, yes.
That sounds fun. Yeah, that's one of my goals. Like in the next 5 years, I want to be able to get a campaign doing well enough to make those fancy boxes that have the custom printing on it. I think
Yeah.
those look so awesome.
Yes, yes. It's amazing. I've actually had times where I walked around with the box, and the way I've been to places and people run from wherever they are to me because they saw the box itself. Something about the box, people like the box. But something about like the box having the design on it tends to grab people. So that in
No,
and of itself has been marketing.
yeah, if you told me 5 years ago that I'd see that, like, oh, some creators are going to just print their own boxes, ship the product in them, I'd be like, well, that's cool. But I'd see people doing it. I'm like, oh my God, that's so awesome. I had no idea how cool that would actually be.
Yeah.
That's on my bucket list now. Very cool stuff.
Yeah.
So we have this. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook, I think you can go to the comments. You can get to RPX Media and click right here to sign up for this list when it's when the window opens again. Visit the TikTok shop and get some of this great stuff. And another thing I wanted, I guess, to ask you about that dovetails on what you just said. You're kind of letting people get the digital version like as soon as it's done, and then the physical version, obviously, it takes a little longer. I think a lot of people, I definitely want to do that more with my books. I've seen a few people do that a lot more, and I think that's great. Just to kind of touch on what I said earlier, there's a little bit of a trust with late books coming up and people kind of saying like, where's this book? I expected to have it by now. And people have problems with printers, but then there's not a lot of transparency there. But I think just getting the digital book out to people and saying, look, we did the work. And then I think that just builds a lot more trust with your backers and the community you're kind of like hoping to build, and everything like that. So that's definitely very cool. So yeah, just what a great looking book. It was awesome to have you on the show. And I hope everyone will go and check this out. Just to before we wrap up, I want to go over a few other projects we wanted to highlight. The teams we're working with. The first one is Danger Squad, a spooky mystery adventure comic book. This is from Eric De Silva. It's a very cool looking book. I've seen the interior pages. It all looks as good as this cover. And he also has a really interesting podcast going with that kind of builds up to the main story of the book. That is very cool. So I would encourage everybody to check that out. You can get to the page that you see right here in the links on our show description. The next one is the book that Joey, my co-host, and I work on, Archetypes 1 and 2. No, we did one of these already earlier this year. That's out to people. It worked out really well. And so I hope everybody will go over and check this out. Like I said, the link is right in the show description, and you can get on this list. We're going to be launching pretty soon, as soon as me, finishes up a cover that needs to get done with all my time. So that's kind of on me. But that one's coming up soon, and we're pretty excited about it. And then the last one I want to highlight is my book. It's the sequel to Scarlet Twilight. It's called Countdown to Cobalt Crisis. This is the setup for the next Scarlet Twilight miniseries, which is going to be kind of a love letter to Crisis on Infinite Earths and Secret Wars, but done in the style of like a 1940s comic. So you're going to get all that retro sort of vibes with the big time comic book, Big Two style event. So if you're a fan of any of those things, the link is also in the description. I hope you'll head over there and get on the pre-launch list for this one. This is going to be launching pretty soon. I have to finish one more page and then we are going to go live. So hopefully everyone will check those out. The last thing I want to bring up is we have a deal arrangement with Gemini Comic Mailers. So anybody watching, if you are looking to fulfill your campaign, head over to Gemini Comic Supply and enter this code, Geek Collective 10, to get a discount on your Gemini Comic Mailers. You can't do these books and send them out getting all banged up. So I hope everybody will check that out. Robbie, thanks again for coming on the show. It was great to have you and to get a look at this great book, The Seventh Kingdom.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise. All right, everybody. We will see you next week, and hope you enjoyed the show.